Augustine was born in the 4th century in North Africa, in what is Algeria today. North Africa then was not like Africa we think of today. It was the center of culture alongside Rome. Augustine's mother wanted him to become a Christian like her, but he chose to believe in Manichaeism, rejecting Christianity. Then he met Saint Ambrose, the Bishop of Milan at the time, and was baptized and became a Christian. After then, he founded a brotherhood with his companions and dedicated himself to the life of a monk. In order to understand the philosophy of Augustine, we first need to understand the lineage of thought that begins with Plato and goes all the way down to Plotinus and Augustine. So today, let's talk about them in order. Let's look at Plato first. Plato divided the world into two: the world of ideas and the world of reality. The world of ideas is complete, and the world of reality is incomplete. The world of ideas is the real world, and the world of reality is the fake one. The world of ideas and the world of reality are completely separated. So we cannot go to the world of ideas from the world of reality. You can only go there after death. On the other hand, Plotinus thought there are too many things in the world to divide them into two. So Plotinus divided idea, nous, psyche, and matter. What Plato called idea, Plotinus called the one. The further you go up, the more complete. And as you move down, the more incomplete. The higher up, the more good there is. And the lower down, the more evil there is. While Plato thought it's impossible to move between the idea and the reality, Plotinus thought that the movement between the one, the mind, the soul, and matter is possible. So through free will, humans can reach unity with the one or fall to the material world. And the mind, the soul, and matter all emanate from the one. Augustine was deeply influenced by the philosophy of Plotinus. He replaced the one from the philosophy of Plotinus with God, and changed the theory of emanation into Christianity. Then, everything aside from God are his creations. So the question of how God created the world is addressed. Plotinus' idea that the further you go down, the more evil there is, was turned into the idea of corruption. And the idea that one can reach unity with the one was turned into the idea of salvation. Let's talk about the problem of evil. Before he converted to Christianity, Augustine was a believer of Manichaeism. In Manichaeism, there are two gods, a good god and an evil god. The idea is that just as good exists as an entity, evil exists as an entity, and that the world is kind of a drama between good and evil. But there is something odd in all this. God is an omniscient, omnipotent, omnibenevolent being. So how could there be evil? Why does God permit evil to exist? Augustine's answer is this: evil doesn't exist as an entity, but it is just the absence of good. That's not to say evil doesn't exist. It doesn't exist as an entity, but that doesn't mean it does not exist. Here's a hole in the wall. The hole exists here, but the hole doesn't exist as an entity. It's just the absence of the wall. Like a hole, evil is also just the absence of good. In Augustine's Confessions, Augustine repents stealing pears from his neighbor's pear tree when he was a kid. Some might ask whether stealing a pear as a kid is something worth repenting, but it's not so simple. Augustine didn't steal the pear to eat it, or to take revenge on his neighbor, or even to show off his bravery to his friends. He just stole it. He didn't even eat it, but threw it away. To exaggerate, he committed a sin for no reason. So Augustine is not just repenting his stealing the pear, but he's also asking why man has this evil nature of sinning. Augustine emphasized the original sin of men. All humans are sinners because Adam sinned. So Adam's sin is the sin of the entire human race. Augustine went on to claim that the sin is passed on to the soul of the children through the sexual intercourse of their parents. Therefore, men cannot gain salvation through their own free will. Only the grace of God can save us. On the other hand, Pelagius, a British theologian from the 4th century, had different ideas. The sin that Adam committed is Adam's sin, not the sin of the entire human race. Since the sin of an individual belongs to only that individual, Men can be saved by not committing sin, by leading an ascetic life with his free will. Of course, the grace of God is needed for salvation, but whether to accept it is a man's own choice. Augustine was a Roman. The Romans had completely different ways of thinking from the Greeks. The Greeks liked obscure things like the theory of ideas, but the Romans could understand it. The Romans lived a life of conquest, so they liked to solve problems in a practical way. It was the same for the question of truths. For the Romans, philosophy wasn't just a problem of curiosity, but something to be fought for with one's life. Then how can we know the truth? Augustine's answer is this: believe. In order to know, one must first believe. Usually, when we know something, we come to believe it. Knowledge comes first and belief later. But for Augustine, it's the other way around. Belief comes first, and once you believe, you come to know it. Once you believe in God, you will come to know the truth. Let's wrap up. First, Augustine succeeded the philosophy of Plato and Plotinus and turned it into the Christian thought. Second, in Manichaeism, evil is an entity opposed to good, but for Augustine, evil is just the absence of good. And while Pelagius thought that sin is restricted to the individual, and so individual free will is more important for salvation, Augustine thought that sin began with the original sin of Adam, and therefore we can only be saved by the grace of God. Third, for the Greeks, truth was an elusive concept, like the idea. But for Augustine, who was a Roman, truth was something to be earned through faith.